So you'll see that notification pop up here in a moment. And here we go. So let me get things kicked off here. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out tonight for this wealth mindset and real estate investing meetup. I am the host. My name is Chris Price. I am the host of the Wealth Mindset and Real Estate Investing Meetup. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Red Fox Multifamily. I'm super excited for tonight's speakers to really help educate us on how to be successful real estate investors. But before I get into that, what I wanted to do are a couple of logistical things. First off, just to give everyone a shout out for taking the time out of their busy schedules to get that self-education. This is where what really makes a difference for folks as it comes to building their wealth and these things are so important, and taking an hour out of your busy schedules to invest the time to be here this evenings to get some learning is so critical. So I'd like to thank you guys for doing that. So let me take a moment just to tell a little bit about the meetup and what we're about. So the Wealth Mindset and Real Estate Investing Meetup is open to all who are interested in growing generational wealth through passive real estate investing and increasing their financial intelligence. This meetup is for the busy professional and retirees across various different industries. The individuals in the group make a good living and they have discretionary income to invest in real estate for its proven wealth building power, but don't have the time, skill set, network to do it oftentimes at speed and at scale. And so this meetup focuses on helping us all grow our wealth mindset by learning how to build and preserve wealth while developing and maintaining an abundance mindset. This meetup will focus on multifamily real estate investing as well as other proven ways to build wealth through real estate, through passive investments. And this meetup is sponsored by Red Fox Multifamily. Red Fox Multifamily works with investors who are dissatisfied with the low returns from savings accounts and bonds, and investors who are concerned about the volatility of the stock market. Red Fox Multifamily puts discerning investors' capital to work for them and by investing in exceptional multifamily properties in the best markets nationwide. Demand for multifamily rental units continues to grow and is driven by both preference of certain demographics as well as unaffordable single-family home ownership options. Red Fox Multifamily is based in White Plains, New York. We partner with investors for whom the stability of real estate investment appeals, but the stress of property ownership does not. We give our investors the benefits of real estate investing through syndication, which is a group investment in multifamily property. So thank you guys again for being here. Just a few logistics as we go ahead and get started. So logistics here are simple. Please mute your lines when you're not speaking. Hold questions to the end of the presentation if you can, unless the speakers invite you to come and speak or ask your questions along the way. And Jonathan and Paula, please do, you let the group know when you're presenting what you prefer. But I typically, and from my experience, I see oftentimes the presenters answer questions along the way throughout their presentation in anticipation for what might come. This presentation is being recorded. This material does not constitute an offer or solicitation to purchase securities. This is information only and should not be construed as business, financial, or legal advice. So thank you guys again. And one last thing, for us here, if you're interested in talking more about wealth mindset and real estate investing, you can scan this QR code or you can email me at Red Fox Multifamily, which my email is below. So without further, let me take a moment to just review the agenda and then introduce our speakers. So our speakers this evening are we're going to have the speaker introduction, the speaker presentation. We'll have a brief Q&A, and of course, we always like to allow some time at the end for some virtual networking for those people who want to hang back for a few minutes and chat. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our speakers for this evening. So tonight, we have the pleasure of having both Jonathan and Paula Nichols from Apogee Capital here with us this evening. So let me start with Jonathan. Jonathan is a real estate investor local to the DFW Metroplex. He began his real estate investing career after having worked for almost 10 years in the aerospace engineering industry as a propulsion engineer, where he analyzed and integrated turboshaft engines on helicopter platforms. He holds a Bachelor in Science degree and a Master's in Science degree in aerospace engineering from Texas A&M and Virginia Polytechnic Institute, respectively. He and his wife Paula first began their investing journey in 2018 and have undertaken numerous different types of projects before forming their multifamily investing company, Apogee Capital, in 2020. His past real estate projects include a 75-unit A-class apartment complex in College Station, Texas, as a general partner, two 100-plus unit complexes in the Tulsa MSA as a GP, and an 8-unit apartment to a STR conversion in Arlington, Texas, as a GP, and almost 1,000 units investing as a limited partner. Additionally, he has numerous residential real estate investments and a top-rated short-term rental business in the Arlington Entertainment District. Known as a person with a high work ethic, Jonathan enjoys helping others to achieve their financial goals. Outside of work, he enjoys spending his time racing in Ironman triathlons and traveling with his wife. That is awesome. And with Jonathan this evening is his wife, Paula. Paula is a real estate professional with experience in product management, investment analysis, and contract negotiation. Paula and her husband, Jonathan, co-founded Apogee Capital, a real estate investment firm focused on supporting the financial growth of their clients by providing them with the opportunity to passively invest in multifamily apartment syndications. Paula began her career as a management consultant, where she worked on multiple projects with clients in the banking and utility sectors. After years of building her personal real estate portfolio while working as a management consultant, Paula joined a DFW startup where she manages the pre-development of single-family rentals communities. She holds a bachelor's in science degree in business administration, finance from the Texas A&M University. Paula is a licensed real estate agent and certified Scrum Master. Awesome bios, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening to educate us. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Paula and Jonathan to share with us their presentation.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, guys. Great to be with you this evening. I appreciate the invite, Chris. We were really excited about this. And when Chris first asked me, I came back and said, hey, we have a great presentation, but Paul and I have to do it together. So we're both excited to be here. Can everyone see the screen that we presented now?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll get rocking and rolling. So we are Apogee Capital, Paula and I. It's our multifamily syndication business that we co-founded together back at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. As Chris read in our bios, we spent several years investing in residential real estate and then pivoted over to multifamily. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how to be a successful multifamily investor. And, you could be looking at this from a few different perspectives. You may be looking at this as a potential active investor or active investor who wants to grow their business. And I think this presentation will be great for you. You may be looking at it as a passive investor and wanting to understand what goes into multifamily real estate investments and learn a little bit more about that. I think this presentation will be great. Or perhaps you're pursuing some completely different genre of real estate investing, and the lessons learned here will be useful as well. So we're really going to focus more on like the mindset and the how-tos of being successful than necessarily like nuts and bolts of, underwriting or something like that. So I hope it'll be useful to you. And one bit of homework that I need everyone to do or think about as we get started, preference would be if you have a piece of paper or a note card in front of you, I want you to think of one real estate investing goal that sounds challenging that you would like to accomplish in the next year. So as I mentioned, this will obviously be different for everyone. It could be maybe doing your first syndication if you want to be an active investor. It could be maybe passively investing in a number of doors if you're interested in being a passive investor. It could be something totally unrelated. But I encourage you just to take, a couple seconds while I wrap up this intro and write that down. And then as we go through each of these lessons learned, really think as you're taking notes on how these lessons can apply specifically to your goal. Because, we can present this information to you, but that's the one piece that, you'll have to connect yourself as how these lessons will apply to your goal. Moving on to our slide, just one more piece of information about us at Apogee. So a lot of people say, well, what is Apogee? What does that mean? And you'll find here that I go off script a lot. I don't necessarily read everything word for word, so you have to kind of stick with me. But in aerospace engineering, which was my background in the engineering work world, Apogee is the point in an orbit. So if you have like a satellite, for example, orbiting around the Earth, or a spacecraft orbiting something else, it is the point that it's the furthest away from the center of that object in the orbit. And it's really important to us because it tells a lot about the distance that a particular spacecraft or satellite can reach, and also conveys a lot of information about kind of the coverage that it gets over the Earth in the case of a satellite. And so it's a term that every aerospace engineer knows and uses a lot. And then so it ties in with our investing goal at Apogee Capital, which is to then help people or investors reach their financial potential by investing in high quality real estate assets. And so our values are excellence, integrity, and people first. I think those are pretty self-explanatory, but that's what we live by in each of our investments here. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Paula just to tell a little bit more about us and kind of our story.
Yes. So we thought we'll be starting by talking about who we are, just because people go first as part of our values. And so I'll kind of share a little bit about who we are as a couple, as partners, and we're excited to also get to know you guys as you guys attend this meetup. So we met at A&M, as it was mentioned on our bio. We actually met through CKI, or Circle K, also known through Kiwanis as a service organization. We both are very passionate about serving our community and leaving the world a better place. And so that's how we met. Jonathan was majoring in aerospace engineering, and I was majoring in finance. And that's where our story began. After graduating from A&M, we both moved to the DFW, Jonathan to pursue a career at Bell Helicopter, and I came to pursue a career in management consulting. And although we both loved our jobs and learned a lot, we found ourselves kind of hungry for a little more. And that's when we decided to get married, and we went on a trip to Europe. And through that trip, we listened to countless podcasts, Bigger Pockets specifically. Brandon Turner became our indirect mentor during that trip in Europe, and I will say that was a catalyst in our story as investors. After that trip, we decided to pursue real estate full time. And Jonathan, he dedicates 100% to the Apogee business, and I divide my time between Apogee as well as my job in the development business, which I am also learning a lot, specifically managing around $270 million in portfolio for our build-to-rent communities here in the DFW. So we both love real estate. We both love serving our community, and we really enjoy kind of creating those personal connections with our investors and really helping our family, friends, and new friends. And so that's who we are.
So now to jump into the good part of the presentation that you came for, let's talk about some investments. So here we have our first investment, which was indirectly something that we invested, and that was our first single family home. In our second slide, we'll talk about the first purchase that we bought for an investment, but in order to make that purchase, we had to house hack and live there. And so When we left, this single family home that we bought when we got married became our first investment property that we rented out. And the story behind it was we were searching for a renter. We had never done that before. And we wound up finding someone who wanted to rent from us that met the criteria on the application. And so we sat down one evening to write the lease, or sign the lease rather, with him. And he informed me that he too was wanting to get started in real estate investing. But when I asked him, well, why aren't you, out looking for something to buy? He told me, well, the market's just too hot right now. And so I'm going to wait until it cools down and then, buy something later on. Well, lo and behold, he rented from us for a little over 2 years. And during that time, in addition to the cash flow that we enjoyed after expenses on the property appreciated over $50,000, and we paid down, probably over $10,000 of equity on principal pay down on our loan. And so, he could have bought something, at that price at the same time and, reap those benefits himself. But because he chose to sit on the sidelines, we reap those benefits as the owners, as the investors of the property, which he conveniently paid for during that time. And so on each side, we have a quote and then a lesson to go with it. And so the quote here is from Zig Ziglar. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And so I think a lot of people think they have to have everything figured out in real estate and time the market perfectly. And that's simply not the case. The most important thing is our first lesson, which is to take action now. Don't wait 2 years to go buy something. Don't sit on the sidelines like our renter did, because we were very thankful for him, but it would have definitely been in his best interest to get in the game early. And so lesson 1 from the presentation is, be ready to take action on your goal, whatever that is that you've written down now, whether that's going out and doing an active investment, jumping on a syndication team, choosing a sponsor and making a passive investment, or some other real estate related goal. Make your plan and execute on it.
That's right. And what you will find out is that it's never the right time. It's never the perfect time. I mean, even today, we can look at the stock market and think, oh my goodness, right? There's a lot of uncertainty in the market today. But if you look at a year ago, the market was hot, and so there was no deal. And if you look at 5 years ago, the market, there was many deals, or in 2008, there were many deals, but there was not enough equity. And so there is always going to be that challenge, and it is your job as investor or passive investor to really figure out what works best for you at that moment, and not let fear take over that piece that Jonathan was mentioning, taking action. So for us, our second step towards taking action, right? Our first investment was almost by default. It was something that we were buying for personal use. But then our second investment, we tried to be a little bit more strategic, and we wanted to do small multi. And so that's when we moved into our fourplex. We had to be very creative, because in order to purchase this fourplex, which is located in Arlington, the entertainment district in Arlington, Texas, we have to, put down $100,000. But at that point in our career, we didn't have $100,000 to put in one property, and it will be a lot of money in one asset. So what we decided to do is to do what some know as house hacking. And what we did is that we left our cute little home and moved into this fourplex into, I would say, an up-and-coming area in Arlington. But that was our entry point for this small multi that at that point we bought for $50,000 over appraisal. So people may think, oh, well, you bought that overpriced, etc. But at that point in the market, homes were not appraising for what they were selling for. People were all asking over market value. And so we had to play, we had to learn the rules of the game and be creative. And so we did that, and we did a seller finance, the seller finance at 50K delta. And once we moved in, we realized that there was a lot of repairs that needed to happen, and the current tenants of the fourplex were not the type of tenants that we wanted to necessarily deal with. And so we decided to turn around and do a short-term rental strategy. And it's funny because at that point, I think my mom was the one who mentioned, hey, have you thought about short-term rental? I've heard that it's actually really good. And so she's not at that point, she wasn't a real estate investor, but she knew about Airbnb, and we just researched about it, we learned about it, and we pivot our business plan and converted the entire fourplex into a short-term rental business. It is a business. For those who are interested in short-term rentals, know that it is a business. It's not a passive investment. But with this approach, we were able to basically transform this and now cash flow around $3,000 a month. The current market value of this property is 565, which you can see has appraised, increasing value drastically from the point we purchased it. And I believe this is like as of earlier this year. But that leads us to our second lesson, or I guess before I move to lesson, is this quote: every plan is a good one until the first shot is fired. And I mean, I think that sometimes you enter into a deal thinking that's going to be something else, and then you realize that you have to, think critically to make it work and make it work well for you and your investors. And so I think that that's a skill that Jonathan and I really bring to the table, and really will challenge you and encourage you to use that next time you look at your deal. So think outside the box. That's lesson number 2. How to think outside the box and be creative.
Absolutely. And so, after we did the fourplex and, had some success with the short-term rental business, we continued to grow that business a little bit, buying some personal properties. Obviously, we moved out of the fourplex as quickly as we possibly could. And so, we continued to grow that business, but we realized at that point that we wanted to be full-time real estate investors, that this was a business we wanted to pursue and put all our efforts into. The question that we had, though, was how do we scale that business where we can do it full time? And so we began to talk to some of the people in our local REIA meetup, and it seemed to us that most of the people who were full-time real estate investors were involved in multifamily. And so I thought, well, that sounds cool. I'd like to, learn how to invest in apartment buildings. That seems interesting. And so off we went and began to learn. And so there were a number of different things that we had to go through in order to transition from single family investors to multifamily investors. And so obviously there are some similarities that carry over, but there's a lot of things you have to learn as well. And the first one that you see here is changed our mindset. And so it was easy-ish, I would say, for us to wrap our heads around a single family investment. We need to put $20,000 down or $30,000 down, and this rehab's going to be a few $1,000s. But when we started thinking about projects that were millions of dollars in acquisition costs and the need to raise millions of dollars worth of capital, it was something that really challenged our mindsets and took a long time for us to grow into that role and say, hey, I believe that we can do this, it's possible. And so that was step 1 in transitioning to multifamily investors. The second thing was learning. So regardless of what type of investment you want to go into, while I do encourage you to take action now, per the first lesson, one of those first actions that you need to take is to learn. Yeah. And that's because while real estate does offer some incredible rewards to those who know what they're doing, it can also offer some hard lessons to those who don't take the time to learn. And so for us, this looked a lot like, starting out listening to podcasts, reading every book we could find on multifamily, taking different people out to dinner who were local multifamily investors, and then ultimately joining a mentorship program. So Chris and I are both members of Michael Blanc's mentorship program. I'm actually now, as of a few months ago, a coach in that program as well, but really investing in yourself and your education. The next thing is networking. And so if you want to become someone, you need to hang around the people that you want to become like. You need to find people that you can look up to and kind of grow into their shoes, so to speak. And so one cool thing about this picture here that Paula mentioned earlier in the story is when we first started in real estate in general, single family rentals, we probably listened to 100 different episodes of Bigger Pockets. And then when we jumped into multifamily, Michael Blanc became our, I guess, official mentor within that investment sphere. And so here at Dealmaker Live a year and a half ago, we got this picture with both of these gentlemen together. And that was, pretty fantastic considering that they both, in our minds, played a pivotal mentorship role in our development as investors. And so always be out networking with, people who can help you grow, help you move forward. One thing that as a coach now I have to constantly remind students of is that you have to look at a lot of deals. Most days as an investor is boring and honestly many times discouraging because for our first investment, and I would say even today, in our funnel, we probably take in about over 100 deals and make at least a dozen offers, serious offers, in order to find one deal. And so that's a lot of time, a lot of disappointment, and you have to be ready for that if you're going to go into this industry. But eventually, after we had done the reps, we landed our first multifamily deal. And that deal is called The Park at 1220. It's a 100-unit multifamily C plus property in the Tulsa MSA area, prior to be specific, that offered the opportunity to give high returns through light renovations, or value add through light renovations. And what's interesting about this property is that we actually had been speaking to the people we partnered with on this for the better part of, I say, 2 years before we partnered with them on this project, and had a very strong organic relationship with them. And so, as for any of you who are involved in multifamily, that oftentimes with bigger properties, it's typical to have partnerships, and people will ask, well, how do you develop those partnerships? And the answer is oftentimes it's very organic, but very intentional, and taking the time to really get to know each other and be on the same wavelength. And so what's really cool about this project is that I think our initial projections were like 7-something% cash flow, and we purchased it in the neighborhood of, I think, a little under $7 million. And these numbers, the 9% and 10 here, were actually from about 8 months ago. I think we cleared year one with like 12+% cash flow on this deal. And so it's really been an incredible deal for our investors. And honestly, one of my personal favorite moments in investing was right before the Christmas after we closed this project. Right before it is when we sent out distributions. And so we had a lot of friends, family, coworkers who invest in this deal, people that we see on a regular basis. And getting to just kind of walk up to them and give them a hug right before Christmas as they got their first sizable distribution was definitely a highlight in my investing career. And so you might ask, well, what did you do on this project, or how did you get involved? Well, that's a great question. So first of all, I already mentioned networking with fellow investors, taking the time to develop those relationships to where people trusted us to be on their deal. The second was adding value. And, we did that through a few different ways. One was I was actually one of the partners who went and did the due diligence on the property. The lead sponsors on this live over in the UK. And so being here in Texas, we're much closer. And so I went up and did the walkthroughs, especially having done a number of renovations and stuff. I was able to help in that manner, kind of sizing up the CapEx and the underwriting plans, and then ultimately raising money. Something I always tell my students is, starting out, you need to be prepared to raise, a significant chunk of money for a deal in order to be a viable GP partner. And so that was definitely something we brought that was a lot of value to this deal. So the quote for this is, if we're satisfied doing what we're used to, it'll be easy to miss what we've been made for. Quote by Bob Goff. And the point of this quote is that it would have been easy when we finished the fourplex, when we had the short-term rental business going, to just keep doing projects like that and stay within our comfort zone. But we would have never had the opportunity to do a project of this scale. We would have never had the opportunity to help the friends and family that I mentioned if we hadn't been willing to dream big and step outside our comfort zone into this, honestly, at times very scary investment arena. And so the lesson for this property is to dream big. And we have this book here. It's actually one of our favorite books. Has nothing to do with real estate, but also everything to do with real estate. So I actually, for Christmas last year, bought a copy of this for all our partners on our deals. And so if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. So lesson 3, dream big.
Yeah. And so from dreaming big to our short-term rental Aplex, that was our third investment that we did as a group. We did this as a JV partnership. And you might think, oh, Paula, Jonathan, y'all went from 100 units to 8. How did that go? Well, what you need to understand is that this project was actually really just provided by one of the brokers that Jonathan had developed a relationship with. He knew that we focused in Arlington short-term rentals, and so he came to Jonathan and said, "Hey, this is your deal. Like, you really need to buy this property." We got really excited, and then we went to see it, and as you might see, it looks a little bit run down, to say the least. What we did when we ran the numbers, we realized that the opportunity on this deal was to really flip it into a short-term rental, do a JV, and we brought zero money down, like zero money of our own into this deal, and we were able to profit very largely as being a GP and the deal originator. And so we actually made, and correct me if I'm wrong, about the same money that we made on the park, we made through this investment here. So never judge the book by its cover, because this little deal became or has become a great opportunity for us and also for joint venture partners. The quote here I have put is, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." And this is how far we've gone. It literally took us 2 days to raise the money for this deal. Originally, we bought it for around $700,000. And it took us, again, 2 days to find the partners, just because we already had the relationships. And we're just so thankful for everyone who has, like, trusted us. They just trust us. We have been able to show that we care, that we do our due diligence, that we work earnestly, and people see that. And it takes years to develop that reputation, but it's so worth it. And so not only we develop good relationship with our JV partners, but also with our contractors, with the people helping us clean, with the people helping us paint. Especially with our lender. Actually, I'll tell you this, it's kind of like a fun story, but Jonathan and I we attend First Baptist Church of Arlington. We love our church and we love to serve there. Well, Jonathan is in the finance committee at the church, and guess who is in the finance committee? Or lender. And so we didn't know that that he was a lender. We didn't know that he worked for the bank that we were going to apply through to get the loan on this property. But he did. And it's just, I will say it was a gut thing, but it was also just coincidence that Jonathan has built rapport and was able to kind of create that connection, who then helped us close this deal pretty smoothly. And it is a unique product, right? Not everyone's going to land on short-term rental, approach. So it was definitely something that having that strong network and having that, we get to go farther when we go together with the right people and the right partners. And so that is our lesson number 4. Build a strong network.
Absolutely. And so what's interesting is I think for those of you who are involved, with Michael Blanc's program, you've probably heard how he says, after you get the law of the first deal, you get the first deal done, and the second or third or whatever follow in almost immediate succession. So it's interesting because we closed on the park on a Thursday of a given week. I'm not sure exactly when it was, been a while, but and then that Friday I signed the contract for the 8 unit. And so, we closed that a couple months later, like Paula said, and then I thought, man, we're going to take a breather and just take a break. And so we went on vacation. Well, lo and behold, right before we go on vacation, a broker brings me this deal that we're about to talk about off market. And we wound up signing the PSA, negotiating and signing the PSA, and then a lot of the vendor things like lending and all that while on vacation. And so we wound up working about half of our vacation on this project, basically. But it was super cool just to see how, it really did fall into place, once we kind of got the momentum going on our deal finding. And so, as I mentioned, I had a broker relationship who brought me this 75-unit multifamily. It's located in College Station, Texas. For those of you who are not native Texans, you have kind of Dallas in the north part of the state. In the central southwest part, you have Austin, and of course, southeast Houston. And right in the center of that triangle is Bryan College Station. It's an MSA of about 250,000 people, and also the home of A&M University, where Paul and I went to school. And so we were not at that time necessarily actively looking for properties in that market. But when this one was brought to us, we were in a position to understand the market well and be able to make a quick decision on it. And so, oftentimes in syndication, we talk about value add multifamily, and we assume that, we're looking for something like what we saw in the last slides on the 8 unit, where it's fallen apart and we got debris scattered everywhere. And that's how we're going to add value. And sometimes that is how we add value. But there's also other ways to add value to properties. And in the case of this one, the owners of it were a mom and pop who they owned the whole property themselves. But they were trying to run everything themselves. So they did the management, the leasing, the maintenance on the property. And as a result, while they did their best to, take good care of it, there were a lot of things that fell by the wayside. 2 of those being marketing and a website. So they just basically left the property 100% occupied, well under market rents. And so we did our rent survey and figured out, hey, this is a 2012 build property. The units are not anywhere near ready or needing to be renovated yet. We can go in and basically do rent bumps with almost zero CapEx. We went into this project with about $50,000 in CapEx, to give you an idea. And so we purchased the property and obviously implemented a professional manager, a local professional management company who their first task was to build us a website and start marketing the property. And as of this summer, we went through the first lease up cycle on it, and we were able to get, I think, around $125 average per unit rent bumps with absolutely zero renovation. Also implement a bunch of, additional fees for services that we're providing on the property. And so I think it's going to be absolutely a huge win for our investors, not just from a cash flow perspective on a high quality asset, but also a value perspective of something we can hold for, several years before having a good sell on it. And so there were a lot of challenges with this property. When you do syndication, there's a lot of moving pieces. And it can be difficult to organize, legal and your property manager and your lender and your partners. We were the sole lead sponsors on this deal. And so, we were responsible for all of that. And so the quote here is, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And the idea being that, as we talked about earlier, taking the time to learn what you're doing and investing in yourself pays really great dividends when you wind up needing to recall that information and use it in a real world scenario. And so the lesson for this property is to work smarter, not harder. Think about who you can add to your team to help you. Think about, different things that you've learned as far as shortcuts or ways to do things that can be more efficient on your projects. And then you'll find that your projects go more smoothly and you're able to take on bigger, more complex projects over time.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to kind of wrap it up with just some milestones of, okay, Jonathan, I get these lessons. I've written them down. I've got my goal here, but nuts and bolts, how do I get to that goal?
Yes. And just to clarify for everyone who's attending this, our journey continues. So these are just like our big milestones that we realized. And I want you to know that sometimes it's a cycle, right? Every time that you set a goal, it's almost like it has to go through this cycle. So the first one is dream. I'm sure that you guys have heard about, finding your why. What is your why? That is so important because that's what's going to root you whenever you're tired, whenever things don't go well, whenever, you are discouraged. Knowing your why and having your why is going to propel you and encourage you to continue to move forward. So asking, what is your why? Is your why to help your family? Is your why to, help your parents, or to retire, or to be able to, help your community? Like, what is your why? Find it and really root yourself to that so that you can be encouraged and be propelled to really meet that goal. Number 2 is, what does your real estate investing business look like in 1 year from now, 5 years from now? If you're not wanting to be active, what does your ultimate cash flow looks like, right? As an LP, or returns, just really setting that really concrete why. I'm sure that people have heard about the BHAG, right? The audacious goal. And so make sure that you have those really defined and dream big. And then lastly, what are your limited beliefs? And I would like to expand on this a little bit because a few years back, whenever I kept, learning about multifamily, and I just kept hearing like millions of dollars, you have to raise, millions of dollars, and these properties are million, and just the word millions made me very like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to raise millions of dollars? And that was my limited belief. And I remember going to one of her friends and mentors, and her name is Cassie, and she's like, Paula, it seems like that's a limited belief. And, she's really quiet. She, doesn't say a lot. But when she said that, it just like stopped me there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I think it's a limited belief. Like, why do I limit myself with that thought, right? And I feel in my faith, I think that God is so great and God is so big that for him there is nothing impossible. And a year later or a year and a half later, together we were able to raise like, I don't know, $3 million like this. And so it obviously took a lot of work, but I think that just if you're lying to yourself, if you have a fear, definitely write it down and ask people to really speak truth over that, because sometimes it's not as hard as people think it is. And even though it may be hard, it's not impossible. So that's my number one milestone, dream big.
The second one is learn. So we talked a little bit about this in one of the previous slides, but how can you learn? If you're starting at 0 today, how do you go to 100, as quickly as possible, learning about multifamily or whatever it is related to your goal? So we kind of mentioned, reading books, listening to podcasts, going to meetups to learn as much as possible. And there's kind of this fine balance here, because you have some people who will tend to skip this step, bypass this step, and then rather than getting to read and learn a lesson from a $20 book that they bought, they have to learn a lesson from a deal that costs hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, right? And so you don't want to be that person that skips that step. By the same token, you don't want to be that person who becomes, kind of a professor of multifamily, but not someone out in the real world doing projects either. And so kind of the way I gauge things when I'm trying to learn something new is, if I'm listening to podcasts or books about a particular topic, when I get to the point where, 90+% of the times I can anticipate the answer to the question being asked, I feel like I'm getting a good grasp on whatever that topic is, Another thing is find a mentor. Mentors typically are not people who are going to, hold your hand or teach you every single step, but they are people who can bridge that last 5% gap and keep you from getting in a train wreck as a result. And so, mentors come in a variety of different manners. You saw, like we said, Brandon Turner was a mentor of sorts to us, and we'd never even talked to him until we took that picture. So, there's also, I would say unofficial mentorships, where maybe you're partnering with someone to learn from that person. There's paid mentorships, like, what we did through Michael Blanc. So mentors come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but that idea of having someone that you look up to and you grow into their shoes is very helpful as you seek to learn more about whatever it is you're doing in real estate. And then finally, take a course or join a program. Have a dedicated, disciplined regimen of learning that forces you to have to learn. We always say when we're in school, like, well, I could just go learn this on my own. But the truth is, if you don't have that grade there to push you, a lot of us will not take the time to do that. And so that's also an option as well.
Yeah. And then our third milestone is to network. And I think that we cover that through the different examples that we share with y'all. But from a network perspective, I'm a huge person. I love talking to people. I love meeting people. And I'm just a huge fan of networking, because it's about the who, not the how. Please go meet people, continue to talk to people, join these kind of calls where hopefully we get to chat after this presentation, where you get to really get to know one another and really learn from each other. So, go out, go out, meet people online, just get to know those people that are able to help you grow, and those that you are able to help grow as well. And then lastly, when it comes to networking with vendors, make sure that you also understand that we're not all investors, right? Like you have other critical partnerships, such as your attorney, your CPA, contractors, property management, all these plethora of partners that, together, as we said before, we're much stronger and we can go farther. So networking, it's great.
And then the last one, which is my favorite, of course, is to execute. And so, one thing that you'll see if you study people who are successful, whether it's real estate or anything else, yes, they take large amounts of action, massive amounts of action, but perhaps even more important, they're very consistent with that action. So, they don't show up for a week and just work really hard, or show up for one weekend at a conference and work hard. They take meaningful steps towards their goal each and every day and persist up until they succeed. And so, it's kind of like the story where, the guy in the gold mine quits mining 3 feet before he hits gold. You don't necessarily know when you're going to find the next property or your first property. But you do know that if you quit, you're never going to find it. And so it's important to continue to persist until you succeed. You can change the tactics or the strategies or become more efficient along the way, but don't quit. The second thing is when you find an opportunity, jump on it and don't look back. So I think I can speak for both of us when I say that every one of these projects and the projects that we've done since creating this presentation, there's always that sense of nervousness when you first go into it. Are all the numbers right? Do I have everything lined up I need to? Am I missing something? What if everything goes horribly bad? I remember on the fourplex, like Paula mentioned, we house hacked it. And I remember the first night having moved from our comfortable house to the rundown fourplex and laying in bed thinking to myself, if we can get through this, we can get through anything. But we had to be willing to jump on that opportunity and take a hold of it when we had the chance. And so, oftentimes in commercial real estate, or I guess real estate in general, you don't always have all the time in the world to make a decision on an investment. And so you need to have your criteria straight, all your plans lined up so that, you're ready to pull that trigger when an opportunity arrives. And then lastly, of course, repeat. Like Paula said, this is almost a cycle, right? Each time we go to another level, we kind of go through this whole goal investing journey again. And so, be ready to repeat, start over dreaming and grow from there. And so I think that's all we have to say, unless Paula has something to add. And I think we haven't rambled too much to have time for questions. So we're going to close down the presentation and
you can
be
leave
happy
your
to answer the
contact
questions.
Leave your contact up.
Okay, we'll leave the contact up. We can't see the chat. So if someone has something in the chat, we're not seeing it.
No questions in the chat just yet, but I have to say, that was an amazing presentation, guys. Thank you so much. Absolutely incredible story that you guys have. Your journey from meeting an undergrad to your careers now in building an amazingly diverse real estate portfolio across multiple asset classes and just doing some amazing thing. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to share this with us here today. And Jonathan, you really covered me earlier because I was remiss in not mentioning that we are a part of the Michael Blanc program, the mastermind together. But I have to say, while we are a part of it together, what Jonathan is doing in this program and bringing his expertise, as he just demonstrated and Paula just demonstrated this evening, is what he does day in and day out within the community. And so much so that when we talk about deal analysis or anything along those lines, it's really amazing to just hear his passion and share his knowledge and expertise. For someone like me who's coming into this and just soaking it all up, it's amazing. So again, thank you guys for taking the time out. Amazing story. I don't want to hijack it. I do want to open it up to the folks on the phone here to ask their questions. So please, gang, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm from Massachusetts. When you guys were talking about the 100-unit property and you guys were the syndicators, I was kind of just wondering, is that kind of just you guys' role? Is there kind of multiple syndicators, or is that kind of just like what you guys do and you guys are kind of like the orchestrator of making sure everything is done in like a timeline and, like you said, the underwriting, and then for that being able to take a percentage of like maybe cash flow or equity when you sell, or maybe percentage each year?
There's always a line there.
Yeah, so let me just clarify the question. Are you asking like, kind of what's our role compared to the investors that are putting money in, or like within the GP, the general partnership team, what's our role on that team?
I guess maybe a little bit of both. I know there's a lot of different rolling
Okay. Yeah.
positions, so I don't want to get too in the
No,
Kind of just
no.
like a general idea of like syndicators, and then when you guys also invest.
It's a very good question. So I'll answer it in two parts so I get both questions. So on a real estate syndication, what we're allowed to do through the SEC is basically solicit for investments into a given property and the business plan associated with that property. And so there's kind of two classes of shares. You have what's called the general partner or GP shares and the limited partner or LP shares. And so the general partners are what you can think of as the sweat equity on the deal. So, we're finding the deal, creating the business plan, putting all the different team members into place, doing all the work associated with the project. We're raising capital. And then the limited partners are the ones who are strictly investing money into the deal. And the bad news, passively. And so they have limited control on the deal, but they also have limited responsibility on the deal. They don't have to execute a business plan. They're not responsible for the loan, which is a huge deal. As general partners, we sign on the loan. Now, Paula and I, we always invest also on the limited partner side of all our deals. So we kind of have a role on both sides. But, what we're talking about here is being general partners on real estate deals. So I think that's kind of the answer to the first question. The second one, in regards to kind of what we do specifically on teams, I mentioned a little bit about it in the first one, but not as much on the rest. So everyone does it differently, but the way that we generally do it is we have a few partners that we pretty much work with on every deal. And the reason is that they're people that are our friends. We trust them. We respect their, acumen in this industry and vice versa. And so generally speaking, one of us, the person usually that finds the deal, will be the lead sponsor on that deal. So of the 4 projects you saw, there were 2 of them we were the lead sponsors on, and then there were a couple where we were co-GPs or co-sponsors on. And so generally that lead sponsor will be kind of the overarching leader of the project, and then the other GPs, filling in different roles on that project, which will include capital raising, doing due diligence, working with the property manager, maybe working with attorneys, lenders, signing on the loan, any number of things. But we found that to be a really cohesive way to have a team. We're all on the same page, but there is one leader that kind of directs things and just keeps it organized amongst all the partners. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of add and going back to our mission, at Apogee, Jonathan and I, basically we do the heavy lifting so that our limited partners just get to, in a way, enjoy the benefit of being a limited partner in a real estate deal, where they reap the benefit of the returns while we figure out the heavy lifting, right? So we figure out who's going to be putting the deal together, who's going to manage the project. So if you are a limited partner, you don't have to worry about anything like that. You need to be able to understand the deal, and we'll be able to explain it to you. But we do the heavy lifting, and the limited partner just gets to reap, the benefit of investing passively.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for breaking that down. And as syndicators and also general partners, as you said, is your main motive kind of like cash flow, equity, or maybe tax? If you were to kind of break them off into those 3 categories, what do you think is your main driver that you guys kind of want from a project? Is it cash flow, or is it kind of being able to have something on your balance sheet that increases your net worth, or is it kind of to save a lot of money in taxes, if that kind of makes sense?
Is all the above an okay answer?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good idea.
So if I had to pick one on our projects today, I would say it's the overall returns on the project. Frankly, cash flow is oftentimes constrained by the market. So, you have investors who are chasing certain yields on a given location and asset class. And so, for example, right now, when we got into multifamily, it was difficult but achievable to have underwritten cash flows in the 7% range. In 2021, it was difficult but achievable to have cash flows in the 6% range. This year, with interest rates and everything, it's hard to even find them in the 5% range. And so cash flow, I would say, is somewhat dictated by the market. But your overall value add strategy and returns to investors it's not that it's not dictated by the market, but it's a lot more flexible in terms of the implementation of your business plan. Tax write-offs, we always do 100%
Yeah, 100%.
cost segregation. All our projects are usually over 50% write-off year one. So that's definitely a benefit provided to investors as well, which will go back to 80% next year, but still really good.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to what Jonathan said, I wouldn't say we're like, deal agnostic, but we are, as long as you're like, it's a good deal, as you may have seen in our little portfolio, we have a class A that has a lower cash flow, but high, like, returns are, very sizable, and it's a safer, investment, just because it's a class A built in 2012, right? So there is like less risk exposure. But then we also have a class C in Oklahoma, which is a more, higher cash flow market. So our two markets that we focus on is Texas and Oklahoma. And I think that depending on the type of apartment and depending on the specific city or location and property, it could be tailored to whatever the investor's appetite for risk is at that current time in life.
That's such a great point, guys. And I was gonna piggyback on to what you're saying. And Aaron, like, really, as someone who's investing either actively or passively, I would say it's up to you. What Paula and Jonathan described is, sort of their investment philosophy and diversification amongst their portfolio. And each investor is going to have their own take on it. I'll tell you from my experience in investing, what I invest in, and the rationale for my investments as being someone who works in the pharmaceutical industry. We have higher incomes, high net worth, high taxes that come along with those things. Being interested in being able to offset earned income with passive income definitely is attractive to me, as well as things like the tax benefits that come with investing in real estate, and how that income is taxed differently than your earned income. So all of those things definitely are factors. Each investor is going to approach those things differently, but it's a great question, and I love the responses by Jonathan and Paula. I think it's really savvy information that they just offered there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you guys are like, kind of, the main thing is like teaching us and also looking for general partners, like what do you guys usually take as, like, is there a minimum kind of for raising capital with you guys?
I think generally most,
like for a specific project or something.
Yeah. For most GP slots on teams, probably minimum is 500K. I think the biggest thing that most sponsors would say though is that's kind of that's definitely a requirement, but I think the most important thing is the relationship, right? So if I'm the lead syndicator on a deal and I pull someone on the deal, that person is going to have voting rights and a level of control on the deal, even if I'm the lead syndicator with a majority ownership shares. And so, just kind of knowing that person's investment background, their philosophy, what they can bring to the team, those are kind of less tangible, but still very real things that I think are considered by most syndicators.
Yeah. Definitely a marriage. So make sure that that you feel comfortable with the person that you're partnering with. And as Jonathan said, just that relationship is so important because you will be married to them for however long you hold the apartment. And so you want to make sure that they're trustworthy and that you guys work well together.
Do others have questions out there? Just looking at the line. Well, Jonathan and Paula, I wanted to ask one last question for you guys from me, and then I'll give the team one more moment to ask their questions if they have one. And that question to you guys is, what does financial freedom mean to you?
It's a really good question.
I'll let you go first because it's a hard one.
It's a hard one, and to be honest, or frankly, if you asked me that 2 years ago, I think that it may have been a little bit different. But I think today it means having the ability to do whatever I want with my time without being dependent on a fixed income. And so for us personally, I think that spending time with family, or we enjoy traveling. And so just kind of living a comfortable life. We don't need luxury. That's not or what we're seeking. But we just want comfort, peace, and be able to have time to enjoy with our family and friends.
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo that, and just to add, I think the ability to kind of control your destiny, control your time, is a big deal. I think a lot of the general population kind of sees real estate investors as like these evil, greedy people that just sit on the beach and drink margaritas all day. And Paula can tell you that's not the case with me. I get bored after about a day on the beach, so I need something to do, and I stay probably a lot busier, certainly a lot more mentally engaged now than what I did in my W-2 job. And so that's something I really like, is just having something I'm passionate about. Like Chris said, I'll come to mentor meetings, and I usually have this enthusiastic, energetic voice, and just kind of hope I don't scare people. But I enjoy doing this. It's a lot of fun. I think kind of beyond that, to me, what I enjoy outside of the investing is just the ability to be there for people when they need me. So just to give a really brief example, before I was tied to my desk job and, would be there from 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon or whatever it may be. And, last Friday, my parents live very near here. My mom just invited me to go eat breakfast on Friday morning, and I just go eat with her for 2 hours on Friday because that's what I wanted to do that morning. And then, I came back and did my real estate after that, but I wasn't worried about getting back to work or, if the boss was going to yell at me or anything like that. I just went and enjoyed time with someone that was important to me. So that's kind of my favorite part about it.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff, guys. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now. I give me one moment.
Didn't we get the off the